Hello, good evening. So I'm back to you after a long time. So I hope you've read the text, Samskara. Okay, right. So this brief discussion will help you if you have already read it, and if you haven't, you can go to the text with what I'm just trying to share with you. All right. Okay. So I think you know all about Dr. U R Ananthamurthy, a well-known academician, writer, translated into many Indian languages, uh, visiting professor at several American universities, a former vice chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala, a die-hard opponent of fascism and communalism. So in all these ways, he has marked himself as a very important activist, intellectual, writer in the Indian cultural scene. Okay, so before we go to the text, I would like to remind you of a few things about not only Samskara, but the social matrix in which Samskara was written. Okay. The kind of society that Ananthamurthy was familiar with, kind of society with which we are only half familiar. Okay. So, as you know, and as many people have already described, Ananthamurthy was praised for his uh, very decimating criticism of the caste system, right? But we need to take a closer look at Ananthamurthy's novel. For example, how does the caste system operate in India? Okay, if you read the novel, you will get a number of pieces of information which were not available to you elsewhere. For one thing, caste is not just a question of a straightforward hierarchy from top to bottom. Okay, the Brahmins at the top, the Kshatriyas just below, the Vaishyas below the Kshatriyas, and finally the Shudras. And below all these rungs, you have people who are called outcasts, who don't have a caste at all, who are basically Dalits or Adivasis, who are outside the fourfold caste system. Sometimes they are called Panchamas, the fifth people. Okay, so this is the picture that you get about caste system in general. Okay, all right, fine, no problem there. But you must also realize that caste operates not in such a straightforward vertical manner. There is caste within caste. Now, there are very highly placed Brahmins and also lowly placed Brahmins. Okay, as you find in this novel. Okay, uh, uh, one of the Brahmins in the novel, what is he called? He was called who was a friend of the head of the clan at this place, but he was also, yeah, he was called Durga Bhatta. Durga Bhatta, the Brahmin from a different Brahmin caste. Okay, he was not a Madhva. Madhvas were considered higher in the caste hierarchy. Okay, he was from another village, and his caste, although Brahmins, were occupied a lower rung in the caste hierarchy. Yeah. So much so that in Gujarat you will find certain Dalit communities who are considered to be a kind of Brahmins within the Dalit community who perform rituals. They are called Garo Brahmins. So you get this idea. And such internal divisions are common among all the four varnas in the caste system. So among Shudras you have certain castes who are considered a little higher up, and certain castes which are considered a little lower, and finally those who are at the bottom. So caste stratification is something very unique in Indian culture. Okay, it's not straightforward. It has a number of complicated networks. Okay, so they observe this kind of internal hierarchical order. Okay, as I said, you have different divisions within even Dalits who are at the bottom, and some of, as I said, there are certain communities who are considered as virtually Brahmins within the Dalit fold. Yeah, as in Gujarat, those who are called Garo Brahmins. So this is one important piece of information that you get from the novel. Of course, we know that already, but so directly presented. Okay. Now, the Brahmins as a custom-ridden society. Okay, which is an image that we get from the novel. They are actually weighed down by customs, tied by customs, okay, from which they cannot get out. Several customs. For example, somebody dies, nobody can eat anything till the funeral is completed. But remember, this ritual exists even in some of our communities in Kerala, not Brahmins. Many communities, including Muslims. Okay, you don't eat or drink anything till the funeral is over. Of course, now of course it has been relaxed. It's not possible. You can't keep people, or especially children, hungry till the funeral is over. So the kind of rituals that are practiced by people in India, they cut across communities. Every community has certain rituals, burdensome rituals. So one thing that happens when you read Ananthamurthy's novel is the construction that you make. Oh, these are peculiar only to Brahmins. Brahmins are a custom-ridden society. Yeah, it's not true. All communities in India more or less are weighed down by customs. Right. So this is another idea, another false notion that you get from the novel. A third false notion that you might get from the novel is the idea that the Brahmins are weak. Okay, they don't have the life force within them because they are weighed down by rituals, because they are, they don't have freedom of enterprise, because they don't live close to nature or work with their hands. The life force is very meagerly presented in such people. You have descriptions of the of Narayanappa's lover, Chandri. You have descriptions of another Dalit woman called Veli. Right. So this idea that the Dalits, Shudras and the lower castes are physically strong, more vital, okay, capable of kind of enjoying life, whereas the Brahmins are tied down by customs. This is the idea that you get from the novel, which is also not true, which is only a stereotype that you have, yeah, which we continuously perpetuate. Well, the men from the working class who are shown as having muscles, good muscles, physically strong, okay, capable of working for long hours. This is a stereotype. Okay, it might be true to a limited extent because Brahmins are basically people who don't work with their hands, right? And two, closely allied to this notion is the idea of an uh, level of increased level of sexuality in Dalit and backward caste women. which you find described very elaborately in the novel within the two characters, Chandri and Belly. And as you read the novel, you also may get the idea that this is what attracts even Brahmin men to them, which is also a stereotype. It's not necessarily true. Of course, food has a role in probably defining your sexual level of sexuality, right? But otherwise, there is no evidence that people, or women or men of a different caste, of a lower caste or Dalits, have an increased level of sexuality than Brahmins or other castes higher up in the hierarchy. So this is a stereotype which the novel perpetuates, and other stereotypes as well, like you are defying your caste uh, by doing things which are forbidden within the caste, like Naranapa, the hero who's before us not as a living man but as a corpse. You know, Naranapa's it is Naranapa's corpse that is a problem. The body that poses a problem to the members of the Agrahara before it is cremated. Yeah. So Naranapa's defile of the customs. How does he do it? He does it on a very personal level. Yeah. And he doesn't, he cannot touch the community's rituals, the community's observance. He cannot even introduce a single change in his community. So his rebellion is personal, and it is not motivated by reform. This is very important. So if you defy your caste, its rituals, why do you do it? You do it for two reasons. One is because you don't like it and you sincerely wish to change it. The other because you find these customs a hindrance to your personal desires. Okay. Such as when Gandhiji was going abroad to Britain for his studies, there was a big hullabaloo because people thought that a Savarna, an Indian Savarna, crossing the sea would make him lose his caste. So therefore, it was a big issue for some time. And if you probably kind of imagine a situation where Gandhiji is going abroad only to further his career. He had no intention of breaking his caste or his religion's taboos. Yeah, true. So at that point, when Gandhiji went abroad, he had no intention of setting himself up as a social reformer. It is only for his career that he went abroad to Britain to study law. All right. So, what kind of rebel is Naranapa? He lives with a Dalit woman. Okay. He did not attend his wife's funeral. Legally, when Brahmin wife's funeral, uh, he didn't attend. He lives with a Dalit woman. He drinks. He eats meat. He consorts with Muslims in the locality. So all these things which are taboo to a Brahmin he does. But he never utters a word. He calls the senior Brahmins names, of course, fine. But his is a futile personal transgression. You can't even call it a rebellion. Okay. You have people violating a caste rules. You have people violating a community's rituals. Not because you seriously think that it will lead to reform. There are people who have done that also. Okay. There are people who have, for example, cut their queues, kuduma, at a time when cropping your hair was not considered uh, befitting your status in the caste. Yeah, people did that, but many of them did that to express their disagreement with this ritual, not for any personal not for the fulfillment of any personal desire. Right. So construction, this kind of construction is also very vital. And you also get other kinds of stereotypes within the novel. For example, hypocrisy of certain members of the community. Okay, a kind of let us say static life. Yeah, there is no change. There is no production in the community. They live of other people's labor, and in one sense, they are also very poor. There are very few resources. For example, there will be a jackfruit tree, ഒരു പ്ലാവ് ഉണ്ടാവും, ഒരു ബ്രാഹ്മൺ in a Brahmin household in the yard. So the neighbors eagerly wait for a share of jackfruits or mangoes. They're poor. In that sense, they're poor because their life is so stagnated, without a way forward. They are leading the same kind of life over and over again. And like Naranappa, there are other young men who are also influenced by the outside world, the world outside the Brahmin Agrahara. Okay, the world outside the Brahmin Agrahara, which promises them several things. Okay, like one of the characters, a young man going uh, to watch plays. Okay, uh, performed in a neighboring village. Okay, or sometimes even joining the freedom struggle. Yeah, you have that in Raja Rao's novel Kandapura. Okay, that you have people from the upper caste joining the freedom movement. Okay, so just a minute. Yeah. Uh, what I'm here is an attempt to get out of this stagnant life, boring in one way, unproductive, uncreative. So this is what happens. So that is probably a very honest, straightforward issue in the novel. Okay. Now the world outside. It's a vast world, you know, and Brahmins are not generally allowed to eat outside. Of course, they can eat in the households of members of their own caste, but not even in a Brahmin household, which is lower in the caste hierarchy. So, for example, Praneshacharya will not eat at the house of Durga Bhatta, okay, who's actually a Gauda Brahmin, a little lower in the hierarchy, okay, and they can't even think of eating in a hotel in town. Of course, young men secretly do that, okay, and don't think that this is something very peculiar to the Brahmins of Karnataka. Once upon a time, say 50 or 60 years ago, upper caste Hindus did not eat at hotels. Our poet Idesheri describes how his friend, who was a Muslim, his classmate in school, he used to go to the hotel nearby and eat dishes like parambori or parippu, and the poet, as a young boy, used to look longingly at this boy because he couldn't eat. He was forbidden to eat. Well, how did he come to eat? He took his paranganji in the morning and went to school and stayed hungry till the evening. He could eat only after he returned to his home. So this kind of shutting out the outer world. Yeah, the outer world is shut out completely. You don't have any connection with what is happening in the outside world. So this is what the novel clearly points out. Okay. So again, I'm giving this example of Idesheri, our poet, Malayalam poet, because These were part and parcel of upper caste Hindu community life not very long ago, even in Kerala. Not only that you practiced untouchability to a large extent, you did not fraternize with members of other communities, especially the lower caste. You did not eat at a hotel, all these. And you could not ever think of marrying outside your caste. Of course, people did that, but they were immediately ostracized, thrown out of their communities. So, this kind of, I mean, uh, isolation. You are isolated with the community. You don't know what's happening outside. You kind of stagnate. Okay, and you become what are called frogs in the well. Kuba manduvam. Like, no, you don't know anything about what's happening. And excuse me. ഞാൻ തിരിച്ചു വിളിക്കാം. Call you back. Okay. So this kind of isolation, this kind of extreme isolation in the society, okay, building a world of their own. Okay, so if Narayanappa's intervention, if Narayanappa's defile of his community's taboos had resulted in a kind of general upheaval in the community, that did not happen. That never happened in the community. So when we come to the end of the novel, the community has remained unchanged. Narayanappa is dead and gone, you know, and even his memory will be erased. Now, this is not what happens in a novel like Dupupa Koranada. You know, there is a general awareness. There is a general awareness about the need for change within the community. And the protagonist of Bashir's novel, Dupupa Koranada, is indeed a reformer. He is not an anarchic pleasure lover like Narayanappa in Samskara. Okay, and as we move into the novel, we find certain other stereotypes as well. You have the head of the community, Praneshacharya, who's a very sincere, a deeply committed priest, an ascetic, whose wife is an invalid. Okay, she cannot get up or walk. Her husband Praneshacharya even bathes her, and he cannot even think of a normal sexual life. And why does he do that? This is probably another stereotype, that there are people who stick sincerely to the community's beliefs and customs. So Praneshacharya looks after his invalid wife because he feels that this will be bringing him salvation, punya. Okay, and even after, so her name is Bhagirathi, even after she asks him to marry again so that he has children and his lineage is perpetuated, he refuses to do that. Okay, and yet as the novel progresses, we find that he cannot control his desire and he has sex with Chandri, Narayanappa's concubine. See, so this is probably a very important instance in the novel, event in the novel. How a forced kind of celibacy might lead to a transgression like this. A person who even refused to marry because he wanted to look after his wife and get salvation in the next world, here goes in for sex with a totally different stranger, a woman who was Narayanappa's concubine. Right. And within the community, we find people who are clever, who actually desire for money and valuables. Such as, for example, the person who does Narayanapa's rituals is supposed to get some kind of remuneration for that. But some Brahmins are afraid because he had declared himself a non-Brahmin. He had ostracized himself by doing things which were forbidden by the community. Right? So, this dilemma of some people. And some women who egg their husbands to perform it so that they can get all the property. Right? And Chandri in this case is another stereotype. A devout woman, a woman who is devoted not only to not to her husband but to her lover, which Naranapa was. Okay, and it was she who ultimately buries Naranapa, cremates Naranapa. She asks a Muslim cart driver to bring his cart, and the body is loaded into the cart. It is taken to the crematorium and cremated. So nobody knows this. They only learn about it when they enter Naranapa's house, go into his room to find it empty. There is no body, no corpse, because it has already been cremated. So this is another stereotype. Okay, the devotion of a Dalit woman for not for her husband, not even for somebody within her own caste, but for somebody who actually not out of love but out of lust maintains a relationship with her. So you can't say that Naranapa really loved Chandri, and you can't say that the other young man who went out to watch a play loved this woman called Belly, a Dalit woman. They were simply lusting after these women. Yet these women have some kind of commitment to their lovers, knowing probably fully well that they are not serious. So this kind of um, uh, what shall I, servility, മലയാളത്തിൽ പറഞ്ഞ വിധേയത്വം, servility to men of the upper caste. So this is something peculiar to our social life. We also have it here. You have it in a film like Vidhe, Adur Kabalashan film, where a woman, a woman who is a wife of a wandering jobless person called Tommy. Tommy's wife has this kind of servility to Patela, who has no love for her. He is simply using her as an object of sex. Yet she has a certain kind of devotion or servility to Patela. So this kind of servility to the upper caste, okay, very common in the Indian scenario, appears in the novel also. So there are several such things, and of course, the way in which the novel is does not completely reject Brahminhood or the system of knowledge which informs it, the Vedas, Upanishads. So the author does not reject them outright. The author still considers them valuable. If you read the novel, you'll find that. And he kind of positions a certain kind of dilemma, a certain kind of confusion, a certain kind of existential uh, anxiety and doubt that these Brahmins have over their own beliefs and customs. This is kind of foregrounded by U R Ananthamurthy. Okay. So there are other people like Premchand, for example, in a novel called Godan. You have done that. So in Godan, Premchand tries to completely kind of overhaul the traditional beliefs about the Savarna way of life. And both in the novel and in the film, which is made out of the novel, you find that this approach is prominent. Okay, if this it is not. It is a completely empty Okay, pointless system of belief. So it's better that you discard it, right? So these are some of the ideas on which you can work out. All right. So in the next lectures, which I hope will be more detailed, this was an impromptu lecture, a small module which I prepared because of certain unavoidable preoccupations during the entire vacation. I was experiencing this, so that's why I'm giving you this very small video. I'll be getting back to you with more modules, and I'll be trying to analyze the novel in detail. Okay, thank you.